Welcome to Aspire to Lead, where we empower educators and school leaders to grow, inspire, and thrive. I'm your host, Joshua Stamper, author, speaker, and leadership coach, bringing you conversations that spark transformation, challenge the status quo in education, and equip you to make a lasting impact on your campus or in your district. For more information and resources, visit joshstamper.com as we're looking to ascend to new leadership heights together. All right, welcome back and happy summer, everyone. This is Aspire to Lead. My name is Joshua Stamper, and this is a special episode as I have my good friend, COO and co-founder of Teach Better, Mr. Jeff Gargas, who is literally melting in the summer sun.
We were, last week we were talking prior to hit record that last week was, I had to check, but it was one of the hottest weeks we've had in a long, long time in Ohio. High heat, high humidity, no clouds, just sun beating down. And as we were talking, I was at a Scouts camp all week, so it was very hot. This week actually is nice. It's just a nice 80. Like, it's not bad. Like, it's a good summer weather right now. So I'm okay. I'm also in my basement, as you know, with my office. So it's like 60 down here. So
I know I needed to follow your lead. Mine is on the second floor, I'm baking in my office while you're in the nice cool setting.
The funny thing is, during the summer, a lot of times, like when you go up my stairs, hanging on the banister will be my hoodie.
Yep.
If I'm upstairs, because I'll go upstairs, I'll take it off, and then on my way down, I got to put it back on because it's just such a difference in weather. In the winter, it kind of evens out a little bit more. But yeah, I don't care. I like when it's warm. I'm good with it. So.
When you were talking, I was just imagining our summers in Arkansas and how.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I was fine because I was used to the Texas heat, and
you were in Texas at the time. Yeah,
I was sweating and not happy with life.
We walked out because I remember, because you were like pants and stuff, like willingly, and I'm like, dude, why are you in pants right now? It's like we have to do this tomorrow for the, because we were doing those pre-workshops and stuff like that, so we had to dress nice, But when we were just walking around, you were in pants the one day. You did that in New Orleans too.
Yeah, I did
when we were there. We've gone some places together.
Oh, we have Vegas.
We're going to Vegas. We've done Vegas together too.
I know.
We've had a good life, Josh.
We have. Well, it's going to continue, my friend. That's why I have you on this podcast, because I love being a part of all of the things, not only with Teach Better, but then also just hanging out with you, buddy. And this is, like I said, the 39th. Aspire Mailbag, where we are looking for questions and we reach out to the listeners through a variety of different ways. Sometimes I text people, sometimes it's email, sometimes it's just in conversations. And so we also use social media for that. And typically we do anything between 2 and 5 questions, depending on how in depth we're going to get into. Today, we've got 2 questions from folks. And if you're ready, Jeff, I'd love to dive in, because I think the first question is on the tip of a lot of people's tongues. Because one, I was just at a local event here speaking at the Wild Heart Teacher Retreats. And then I had a conversation last week. For those who tuned in, I had a great conversation with our mutual friend, Darren Peppard. And we were talking about Aspire leadership. He was also talking about coaching and admin, and they were kind of working through this. And when he said it, I was like, oh, I want to talk about this more. So between the 2 conversations that I've had with administrators and with Darren, they're asking, how do we find good quality hires right now? Especially because, as we know, Jeff, we're recording this in July. There's always like 1 or 2 people that we weren't expecting that are moving or retire, or something comes up where you're scrambling. And the conversation is, I used to have 30 applicants. Now I've got 5 and that I get to choose from. So with this question about like going through that hiring process, what comes to mind for you?
Is the question, how do I attract the right people, or is the question, how do I make sure that when the right person comes through the interview or process, I'm able to get them to come aboard?
I think it's the second one.
It's the second one. It's like, maybe I only have 5, so it's even more important. I got to get the good one. I got to get the stage.
Yeah.
Because the first thing that pops in my head is culture, which I know probably maybe sounds cliche, but like the culture of, this is a place you want to be.
Yeah, for sure.
When that's actually how you lead, and that's actually how your staff feels in the actual culture of your building or your district, that's going to come through in the conversations that you're having with these people. They're going to feel it. Potentially, they're going to hear it if they do research into things and they explore stuff from your staff and probably from the community and stuff. And it's going to be a place that they want to come to, because, when we think about, one of the easiest answers is, well, pay them more money, right? but we don't always have a choice, right? Because that's not usually up to us. It's up to state, right, and funds and what's available or not available and what's getting cut. And as we know over the last couple of years, like that's not looking any better. How do I exude and also clearly articulate the culture, the real culture that we have here, and what we believe in and what we hold close and how we operate and how we treat our teammates and our staff members and our students and our community and everything like that, so that this is a place where good, quality, passionate, hardworking teachers want to be. And I think that is the first thing that comes to mind. Much easier said than done, but I think that's the crucial part. Because I think when we think about teachers, I mean, I don't think anyone's under the disillusion that teachers are getting into the industry for the money. Never has been, right? It's never been a thing. They want a place where they can come and actually and make an impact and get the support they need, get the autonomy that they want, get the opportunities to have that impact on kids and grow themselves. And I think you need to find a way. How do we exude that? How do we push that out? Which I also think if you do that well, you'll also end up possibly increasing the number of applicants too, because it's going to get known. People are going to talk. It's really not that big of an industry. There's conversations, and I think that's what it comes down to. So take care of your people, and then build that culture.
Yeah, don't you feel like Teach Better was that? Like they're hearing about Teach Better as a company.
Yeah, one of the things I always told them when we were at our highest point, and we had at our biggest, we had 23 employees, team members, and I can't remember exactly. It was either 15 or 16 of those 23 started working for us for free. Now, to put that to some context, they were teachers, so that they were financially already taken care of for the family, but they wanted to be a part of what we were doing because they came across the grid method or met us at a conference or whatever, and they came to us and said, "Hey, I just want to help." And we were like, "We don't have a job." And they're like, "I don't care, let me help." And then we would eventually find a way to get them to pay them a small salary or whatever. And so like that, to me, I like to believe that was because we were having an impact and also building a culture and a community that people wanted to be a part of. They wanted to be a part of what we're doing. And so that's I haven't thought about that for a while, but that's definitely a good note. But I think about the places that I've worked for when I have had different careers and stuff, like when I was younger and stuff, like I left a couple of jobs that paid me better because I just didn't like what they stood for, like value wise. I'm like, I'm not okay with this. And that's easier to do when you're younger. I was in college, so like I didn't have to necessarily have what I needed. I could bounce around stuff, but like I think when you have people coming into your office and into your school, like how do you greet them? How do you show up for them? How do you, for lack of roll out the red carpet for them to explore and see how you're gonna support them and stuff? So, because I think that's what people want almost more than anything, outside of a higher salary if possible.
Yeah, I'm thinking as you're talking, as far as like the applicant piece, right, of trying to get more folks in. I can think of a principal that I worked with. Every time she got promoted or she moved to a different campus, the people that worked for her previously wanted to follow her. They would get in on the transfer portal and try to move. And regardless if it was a middle school or a high school or an alternative school, wherever she went, people were trying to get there. And people always kind of it was kind of a running joke in the district that if you work for her, you'll just work with her for the rest of your career. And then you also had other people that, to your point, she had a reputation. People talked. This is someone you want to work for. This is someone who you want to work with. And so then, when a position opened, just people from within the district were trying to fill that position, let alone other people outside the district trying to come in. And so I think you can look at that as far as building a reputation at a campus level. But I also think too, a district starts to have a reputation. Some of the districts that I worked at, the surrounding metroplex was trying to get to our district. So when our district had an opening, we didn't have an issue about the people in our system. We literally had thousands of applicants in the system that we could go in and look at, where I know other neighboring districts, that wasn't the case, right? And so I think if you start to look at it as a district-wide system, then that might be something that you can build a culture bigger than just your campus itself. Now, as far as the systems itself, we did a lot of things on our campus that were exploratory, because what we didn't like was we didn't like the people that would sit down at the table, give us all the right answers. They'd use all the catchy terms. They looked like gold. And then when they got hired and they were in the classroom and we started to like observe them, it was far different than the person that was talking, right? And so we're like, whoa, hold up. The personnel that's in front of the class is not doing the instructional practices that they talked about at the table, or the classroom management that they spoke on was far different in a classroom. In fact, sometimes it was like, do you even like kids? Like, who is this? Like, this is not the person that we saw just a couple of weeks earlier when we're having this conversation. So we were like, okay, what can we do as far as a system to make sure that when we had them in, that we can actually get to the bottom of practice, like what they're actually like in the classroom. And so sometimes that was giving them, based on the subject matter, okay, build us out a lesson plan or a unit or something like that, so that we can kind of see behind the scenes the preparation prior to, did it match to what they were saying in the interview process? And then we actually had them teach also. So, if it was in the spring, I know we're in July, so there's no students, but I'll talk about that when we did in the summer. But if it was in the spring time when we knew the position was opening up, we would actually have them with students. So the teacher of record would just be like, hey, take the period off, go do something, and we're giving you time. And then as the administrators, we'd go in, and then maybe a team lead, something like that, instructional coach would be in there. And so we would just kind of observe how they interacted with the kids, how they presented the lesson, all the things, right? So then it's almost like, okay, now are their actions matching their words? And then in the summer, if it happened, we would actually invite staff to come, and maybe there would be 5 to 7 teachers in a room, and we just essentially place students, right? So we just it would be a smaller sample size. Maybe it's 15 minutes versus a whole class period, but it gave us a sense of kind of who they were. And I think it helped quite a bit to see them do the thing that they spoke on versus just their words. Because I think it's really easy to pretend that you're great at, the craft when you don't actually have to prove it.
Yeah, there's a million books and 3 billion articles online on how to be a good interviewer, like to be a good interviewee. And I think so that leads to like, if you're part of the team or the person that's doing the interview, and like you need to dig into how to be a good interviewer and how to have a conversation with people instead of just coming in and asking the same basic things of tell me about yourself and what do you do, but like actually, and what's your weakness? Like, just have a conversation with them and you'll find people will reveal a lot. I like the idea of having that sounds like a pretty rigorous process, which I think to the right candidate says they're serious. They're looking for someone that's going to stick around, and I can't BS my way through this. And for some people, like, they might be like, I don't want to work for a district that's this heavy, so I'm going to balance out, because they're not the right fit. So I think that's interesting. Something you said that sparked an idea is, you thought about, I can't remember what you said, how you phrased about being like bigger than your, like thinking bigger or whatever. But I was saying like, if I'm at really it could be for any kind of district, but I'm thinking maybe a district that doesn't have the metro connection like you had, and doesn't have a lot of, has a smaller pool of people. So therefore definitely always going to have fewer applicants. And this is obviously not always possible, but getting out and like going to conferences and speaking and sharing your story, right? I think about like a Joe Sanfilippo, right? Like obviously a very sought after speaker, but like 90% of what he talks about is just here's what it's like to be at our school and to be a member of our team. And when people see that, they're like, I want to go work for you. I don't even care that I'm not in your state. I want to go be a cricket. Like, that's also an opportunity. Again, not always possible, obviously, but like just another avenue to look at. That one, you can have some really cool experiences. You can meet new people, but go share. Or if you can't go, I'm going to, shout out to Joe. A lot of what he has spoke about is like, if you don't tell your story, someone else will. And so how do you share that out? And this goes into the culture and pieces like that. Like how are you making sure that your community and beyond your community know the awesome stuff that's going on inside your school, and through that know that you take care of your people, and therefore are more likely to hear about you, think about you, and look for you when they're looking for, for some sort of, when they're looking for a new job or their first job or a change of scenery or whatever it might be, to find the right people. I also want to note we've talked, like we talked about like culture and like the systems fitness, all the stuff. Also, by the way, sort of a side effect of this is everything else will be better too. If you're focusing on creating this culture that is welcome and again, I used earlier on like the real culture, not a fake facade you put on during interviews, but like you actually have to create this and actually be of like how you operate, and then you won't have to put on a facade. It'll just come through. But do that, like that's going to be better in general. It's going to be better for retention of your teachers. It's going to be better for your students. It's going to be better for the community. It's going to be better all around. You'll likely have fewer issues to deal with because it's just better. So like it's all around. Like that's why I say it's kind of cliche because culture, but like that's literally like the most important thing, especially as we have younger generations coming into the workforce. They care less and less and less and less and less about the money, and more about how's my balance and my harmony in my life, and how am I treated? How am I respected? How do I feel about where I'm at? And so just all around, I think that's a better thing. Also, side note, if you post in places like online or whatever, if you don't list your salary, you're going to lose 75% of good candidates from the younger workforce. Like that is a huge red flag for, and if they ask you about salary and you say, I'll tell you right now, if I sat down in front of you and I said, well, what's the salary range for this? And you said, well, I'll have to talk to HR. I'm out, gone. Because two things. One, you're either shady and you know it's not good, so you don't want to tell me, or two, you don't know anything. Therefore, I'm gone because my leader, who's going to be my leader, doesn't know. You know what I mean? So like, I think having a posting online too, if at least you can post a range because obviously it ranges, right? But like posting that up, being transparent, one, because it's going to make someone more likely to apply because they know whether it's within what they want or not. But also it shows that's the start of your culture. We're transparent. We want to share with you, hey, here's the range. And it's going to change based on your experience, based on, the need that we have or whatever it might be. And so I think that all falls into like, I mean, especially younger generations, they want the transparency. They don't want to be duped. They don't want to be tricked. They don't want to waste their time. And so I think it just continues to go to culture. And then to help that culture run, you need the systems and the processes that you're talking about and the way that you go through. And how do we, now we got them in a door. We got everything they need. How do we make sure they're the right fit for us too? And that's where those systems and the routines and how you test your candidates and raise that bar for what you allow to come in and work with your students is important.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. I have a quick story of things not to do. We had a position, and then we'll move on to the second question because I'm looking at time, but we had a position open. It was a choir position. And unfortunately, because it was in the summer, the principal at the time just hired someone. They interviewed one person. They hired the person without any input. Jeff, can you imagine what the outcome was for that?
Has this person ever sang before in their life?
I don't know, actually, because it was a hot mess. Let's just say that.
I bet.
In which case that person only lasted 1 year on our campus. So the following year, it was a system that got changed, obviously, based on what happened previously, where we did what I said, right? As far as they actually came in and they taught a class. We had 3 top candidates from our first round. The second round was them coming in and, actually running a class, and we got to see them in practice. Of the 3, and I'm going to throw myself under the bus, there was one of the 3 that had a YouTube video that she sent us. She was doing like amazing stuff. It looked awesome. I was like, that's the one. I had a preconceived idea already prior to even meeting her, having seen her in the classroom. Well, in the interview, it was okay, but it didn't match what happened on the YouTube video. Then we asked for this candidate to come in and to teach. And it was just okay. But I already had the preconceived idea, and I already put it down that this was our person. And so I fought.
She read all the books and knew how to play the game of looking good. And
she duped me. So I fought for her. And then the other candidate, the second candidate, killed the interview, killed the time that she was in with the class. We did also, and I didn't say this before, but we would have a student section of interviewees for like a little quick session with students, quick session with teachers, and then a quick session with the admin. So it was like 15, and that was like our first round. And she killed it with everyone. Everyone that she was with, she was amazing, and everyone wanted her. And I remember that summer, coming and meeting at a Starbucks. We did a last little interview with this lady, and she knocked out of the park with just my principal and I. We were at Starbucks. It was in summer. And I remember sitting there and my principal was like, what is the deal? Like, how are you on the fence about this? Like, and so I talked through the fact that I had kind of already made my decision based on YouTube. And my principal had to be like, okay, put that out of your mind. Think about the interview. Think about the classroom session. If you didn't have the video, what would be the choice? And I agreed with her. Okay, the second candidate is the one. Jeff, she was such, you talking about culture, the ripple effect, the year that this choir teacher was in, she not only got teacher of the year for our campus, we also did this like fun thing with like grade level teachers. And then like the students got to vote for their teacher of the year also, which was separate. She won that too. Like she was just like this amazing, not only person, but also, you know, she would take on different things. She did this like huge initiative getting food and clothing and all this stuff for a flood out in Houston. She literally drove the truck down. Like she was like just this huge beacon of light. And I almost messed it up because I had a preconceived idea prior to the actual system of hiring.
Yeah. And I think sort of a side note to remember as leaders to not beat yourself up about making a mistake like that potentially is that no one's actually really good at hiring. That's a myth. People think they are. That's just ego. Because the reality is people know how to play games. And like I said, it's one of the most talked about things is how do you get a job? Well, a lot of that is how do you prep, right? So that person with the video did a great job of prepping and giving herself the best shot to get it. Just because someone's good at that does not mean that they're the right fit for your school or even good at what they're saying they're good at, right? And so I think, you know, unfortunately, in a lot of other industries, you can hire and fire quickly. In schools, you can't. It's just not the same thing, right? So like, there's a little more of a negative impact if you hire the wrong person. But the reality is like that's not a knock on you as a leader or as a person like that. Sometimes the stuff they do works, and you're not going to hire. And so it's important to recognize that. And then how do we fix that if that person has a negative impact? But I love that. I mean, that's a great story of noting that like it's not always the person who looks best on paper or video or whatever, who necessarily interviews the best. And that's why I say like with interview, like have a conversation, because if you just have a conversation, they're not going to be ready for that. And then you're going to get the real person, and there's going to be a little bit of throwing them off, and they might get nervous, they might get whatever. But if you just have a good conversation with them, you can get them in a spot where they start to get comfortable with you. Now you're going to have a conversation with that person, not throwing the prepped answers and stuff like that, but just getting to know them. And you're going to hopefully be able to just trust your gut a little bit of this person feels like our people. Like, so as long as they're qualified and I can, whatever system that I'm in place to do my best to prove their qualifications, I'm really liking who this person is. And I think they're going to bring something to our team. And so good story.
Yeah. Appreciate that, bud. All right. So Elena's got the second question. She's out in Arkansas. And this is someone who's been connected to this podcast for a long time. She's amazing as far as a leader. And so this is something that I know I've had to work through, specifically on both of my campuses that I worked for as administrator. But she's asking about teachers and the understanding of not every behavior deserves like a black and white punishment, meaning that a lot of times our teachers are very much in line with like, okay, A plus B equals C on the discipline matrix. And so specifically with punishment that, you know, it deserves something pretty harsh. And so what comes to mind, Jeff, as far as helping make sure that all teachers on our campus have the same mindset moving forward in regards to student behavior?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this is probably getting worse because of how just the world is and our society is. If you think about, you know, the loudest voices, obviously, but the things that pop up, go viral, blah, 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 all that type of stuff. It's like so many of these extremely important and very hot topics, good or bad, in our country specifically, like get the black and white treatment where it's like you either agree with this or you're this. You either support this or that. And if you do, that means you don't support this. Or in this like nuance, like in everything. And then you see this in politics, you see it in sports, you see it in everything like that, right? So we literally just saw this with like the World Cup with the red card. And it was like, if you disagreed with the fact that our president stepped in, then that means you don't support our team. It's like, well, wait a minute. I can disagree with that and support that. I can also agree with that, and support Belgium. It's not black and white with anything. You see this, like, again, you see it a lot in like politics, but you see it everywhere, like art with music. Oh, you like them, that means you hate that. Or you don't like that band, that means you can't be a metalhead. Like, right, all these different things. And I think it's getting worse and worse and worse, which makes it harder, because then it's like, oh, this kid did this, which means they're this type of kid. And it's like, well, did they? Which means then they should get this type of punishment, because that's all that works with this type of kid. It's like, well, that not there's a lot of context to a kid, a child, right? To all of us. And so I think this is I don't want to go culture again, but it kind of is, right? But like, it's more, and I want you to speak on this, because this is your space, like the culture around how we think about behavior and what behavior is trying to tell us, because a lot of times what it's trying to tell us is to look at the context. Like, a lot of behavior actions from students is really just some sort of either straight up cry for help or a red flag or yellow flag or whatever, for us to then examine the context of why did they get there. And it's very rarely because they're that type of kid, because that's just not right. And so I think because of that, the discipline has to be different, right? Because sometimes, yeah, we need to go harsh, but sometimes they need more love. Sometimes they need some support somewhere. Sometimes there's a deeper issue. Sometimes there's a different approach to it that's actually going to solve the root. And too often we just look at the action and not the root cause of the action. This is definitely language of behavior. Like, this is
language of love. That should be the second.
Normally, if someone threw this question at me, Josh, you know what I would do? I'd be like, well, let me call my friend Joshua. like, I'm calling Josh and Charlie. Like, that's what I'm doing. Right. So,
yeah. So, I'll give a parenting example, because I like using this as an example when I do the keynote. In fact, I'm going to be doing this in South Carolina, this language of behavior, and I'll probably be telling this story. Is like, my family dynamic, Jeff. You've been around quite a bit. As there's so many of my kids, and that my 3 middle boys are crazy, and so sometimes my living room looks like WWE. And so as a parent, I have to decide, okay, what is the punishment or consequences in that? Because as we know, boys will horseplay, and it escalates quickly into a full-fledged fight because someone hit harder than they expected, or someone got put in a headlock or whatever, right? It escalates quickly.
Or got the
chair, they're off the top of the couch, right, which is the top rope, and they're given the forearm shiver. So as a parent, if I decided, okay, my 3 boys are roughhousing and turned into a fight, I'm going to put them in the room for 8 hours. That's the punishment. I'm pretty sure everyone listening, and you just gave me a face, would be like, you're insane and you're a terrible parent. But as far as school goes, if someone was roughhousing in the hallway and we deemed it a fight, that's exactly what we're doing every single day, is we stick them in ISS, which is a room, for 8 hours. And sometimes it's, depending on your state, anywhere between 3 and 5 days, potentially, as the largest discipline that we can provide in a school. And so why is it, as a parent, in society, I'm looked at as a horrible person for doing that as a consequence, but as a culture, as a society, we're fine and it's acceptable for that child to be stuck in a room for 8 hours at a time, potentially 3 to 5 days. So for us, we have to kind of, I think, pull back, because what is occurring is that based on our own experiences previously as students, we just have accepted these punishments as socially acceptable, when if we actually put it up against something else, we would say, well, why would we? No, we're not doing that. So for instance, in business, if I did something wrong in my job, they're not going to stick me in a room for 8 hours, tell me to think about my decision, and then have a better attitude and behavior.
There's a special cubicle over there in the corner. Go to, yeah.
So like, if I misbehave at Teach Better, I'm not getting stuck in a closet somewhere for the entire day. So
no, that's actually why I have the sword.
And we've talked about, and we might have even done this in the last mailbag, of just having like this idea of common language and common mindset moving forward of, is this really truly, is our system that we have created for student behavior going to change what's going to happen in the future? So for instance, if the child is going through the exact same experience, some adverse situation in the future, are they prepared to make a different decision than they made prior? And if I'm saying, okay, I'm only going to stick them in a room and hope and pray that magically they're going to make a different decision moving forward, then I would push back on that quite a bit to say that they don't have the skills necessary to make the appropriate decision. And as we know, that's going to happen. They're going, whatever it may be, right? If they're in the cafeteria and someone threw a piece of food at them and they got up and they jumped the table to go punch the kid, well, obviously they don't have the skills in that situation to be successful. And so what am I doing as the teacher, the counselor, the administrator to make sure that those skills are taught so that they can regulate in that situation? Maybe they talk to an adult to handle it for them. There's a lot of things that could have happened in that situation. And so I would just like to everyone, because most of our educators are parents, if they are a parent, to look at how would you want your kid to be taken care of in the school, in your class? Are you doing something different at home than you are in your classroom? Well, why don't those two things match?
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously it's we're kind of talking about context and nuance stuff, and so does this conversation have that, because there's some times where eventually that's you have to take some sort of action to prevent further issues or whatever. But then I think the catch is like it's deeper than that. It can't be a one size fits all and let's go right to the extreme, but rather like, because the reality is, like, I think the data shows that like the punishment doesn't fix anything.
No, it's the opposite.
So, and I think like if we can get away from the idea of the discipline and I guess, yeah, if we can get away from discipline and punishment and focus more on like how do we educate, right? How do we, like you said, like how do we build the skills? Like it's not like, yes, you have to remove a student from a classroom. That shouldn't be because that's how you want to punish them. It should be because if they're causing something that just cannot be fixed at the moment, you're removing them. But what are you removing them for? You should be removing them to then hopefully find space to help them get past whatever it is that's going on. And again, nuance to this, because obviously there's certain situations where, whatever, but like, it shouldn't be like, well, we're removing you from class because you're being punished. That's why you're being pulled out of class. It's like, no, I'm pulling you out of class because you were hitting Johnny, like, or because you were cursing at the teacher and not letting anybody else learn. So I'm pulling you out of class for that. And we're going to go discuss it and we're going to figure this out. I'll tell you what, you want an actual punishment that'll be worse for that kid than sitting in ISS? Make them talk to you for 20 minutes. Like, God, I never want to. We always joke about that with like the grid method, like teacher, like, if someone's not, if a kid's not progressing, you just, well, I'm going to come sit by you until we get it. They're like, I'm going to work harder next time. So that Mr. Stamper doesn't sit next to me. So like, I think, yeah, it's just, I think what you were saying just makes so much sense of like, it's got to be like, it's not about the punishment. It's like, how do we help this kid get past this thing?
And I'm not saying that they don't deserve consequences. Like,
no, not at all. 100%. Yes.
That is part of the equation that we're talking through.
Yes.
Like teaching the skills necessary is something that just doesn't occur. Yes. Like as far as the kid taking ownership, talking about how it affected other people, working through the skills that are needed when they see this situation again, like those pieces, in addition to the consequences, should be what is worked on once the student is.
I think that's the key nuance there is like, yes. Consequences do have to happen. There should be something, but we need to turn our focus on how do we prevent it from happening again?
Correct.
And we don't prevent it happening again most of the time by the consequence.
No, not at all.
Like unless that consequence is ISS or whatever, or kicking them out, which is not good for that kid. So like, how do we, that might actually prevent the disruption in the classroom. We're not actually solving the problem. And so I think, again, nuance in here. And I think, I don't know how you, going back to the question, I don't know how you get your teachers to understand this, other than training and educating them. Like what resources can you provide, training or support or whatever to help them, one, understand this, but also have the options to where they can, the systems in place for, I can remove if it's a threat or disturbance that has to be removed. But then I also know that these actions are going to happen from how do I get this kid back to my classroom? How do I get them over whatever this was that was causing, and how do I also maybe learn and grow from this as well, so that I can better support them in my classroom so that this doesn't happen again. And so I think as a leader, it's you got to create the system and the culture for that, and that's not something that happens in the first semester or quarter. That takes years.
And I would say that we talk about behavior as language for students. Well, same as for teachers.
100%.
So if they're doing a sort of discipline for a student that you don't agree with, and it's maybe not a part of the behavior matrix, or maybe it's something that just has a campus we don't believe in, fill in the blank, right? Well, there's a reason behind that. So as an administrator, we're having to do the same thing with our teachers as far as digging a little bit deeper to say, okay, why are you having this adverse reaction to this behavior or to the student, and trying to get maybe something that's going on under that underlying piece, right? Maybe it's the teacher doesn't feel like they have control, or maybe it's that they're fearful of something that hasn't even happened. Fill in the blank. There's probably a million different reasons why, they're getting extremely upset about a situation or behavior. And so as the administrator, you need to make sure that you understand what that is, because there's probably a disagreement somewhere and we just don't know what that is. And so once we uncover that, then we can have that conversation and hopefully get on the same page. But that takes work, obviously.
Yeah. I think anytime we talk about any of these things, creating a culture for attracting candidates, and we talk about behavior, we talk about creating a culture for, implementing systems or routines, or improving our communication amongst our staff and our students and our community. If we talk about implementing new instructional ideas, all these things, I think, so often we want them to happen right away, and we don't give ourselves as leaders, as teachers, everything, the grace, the fact that this stuff does not change in a few months. You do not change the culture of your school in a year. Now, again, nuance. You can change it in the sense of it can make a positive growth towards what you're going for. Yeah. But to really make it a lasting impact, it's going to take a couple of years, because you're going to fight. In any of these things, you're going to stumble. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to have to reset. You're going to have to pivot. And so I think it's really important to take away from all this, make sure you're giving yourself the grace and the plan for hey, this a reasonable implementation for whatever it is that you're trying to do to improve whatever it is you're trying to be. But I think even more so for the culture around discipline and student behavior and stuff, that takes time.
For sure.
So give yourself time.
Well, I love asking this question. This is the third one, bonus one for everyone. So what's going on with the Teach Better team?
Really exciting stuff just happening inside the Teach Better Academy. Last time I was on, I think we talked about we launched and we've kind of relaunched. We've had the Academy for 9 years, something like that. We changed platforms, we combined. So now the community is built in. It's really about the community. Now it just also happens to have the courses. And we've got events. I actually, just before coming on here, I was on an event. I had to jump up early because it went over because the conversation was going so well. And so we do office hours events. We do specific training events, and all the stuff built into the community. It's just a community of a growing community of just awesome educators from all around the world, primarily United States teachers. And you can go over to Teach Better or teachbetteracademy.com. First off, the community is free. You can join 100% free. There's a bunch of courses, a bunch of resources that are all free. The events are all free. There is a paid membership that you can get that'll unlock all the paid courses. There's a few paid resources and exclusive ones that are coming and launching soon. You'll have access to all of that. We have a lot of plans for that level going through. If you wanted to try that out, you can do anyone can do a 30-day free trial for that. But if you use the code ASPIRE at the end of your free trial, if you lock in the price, and it'll be 50% off. And right now we still have that price locked in at the current price. Sometime in the next couple of months, that's going to pop up and basically double in price, just because we haven't raised it since 2018, I think. So teachbetteracademy.com and use the code ASPIRE if you decide to go for the full membership. If you just want the free, it's there too. It's super easy to sign up. You just need your email over there. So, and hopefully we'll see you in there.
Awesome. Well, this is obviously a time a lot of people are doing PD events. They're going to conferences. Obviously, too, this back to school events are starting to pick up. So I know Teach Better is doing stuff with schools. Obviously, myself doing keynotes for campuses as we're getting back to the swing of things. I cannot believe the summer is almost over, but I definitely want you to head over to teachbetter.com, because in addition to the Academy, obviously Jeff and Chad have a ton of resources on there. And of course, you can see all the fantastic things that they do for schools and for school districts.
We do some PD every now and then too.
Yeah. That's another branch or arm
we do some of that,
what Teach Better does. Yeah. So I definitely want you to check that out. And then, of course, if you need any support from myself, you can head over to joshstamper.com. And we also are always looking for leadership questions. So if you have something, you can reach out to Jeff or myself. All of those links will be in the show notes and ways to get connected to us. And, buddy, I just appreciate you and look forward to getting back next month for another Aspire Mailbag.
Episode 40 next month. I love it. Appreciate you, dude. This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. We'll see you on the next episode.